Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. All right, so for this week's episode, it's a bit different. So this week, we're not interviewing a farmer. We're not even interviewing someone in the farming industry. We're actually interviewing a business coach. And so this is really interesting because one of the things we teach here at Growing Farmers and in the Field Consultants is that everything you do about your farm, you have to run through a business filter, that you're first starting a business, which is a farm. And so that's why I thought it was really interesting to bring on Alex, who actually is, over the last year, has been one of my coaches in just in life and in business through the EntreLeadership All Access program. But we didn't bring him on to just talk about that. We brought him on to talk about his background from working in startups in the tech industry to running leadership and managing leadership programs for different companies. And now for the last couple of years of working for the Dave Ramsey team and working for Dave Ramsey in the EntreLeadership division. So I know a lot of you are going to say, well, this isn't for me. It's not a farming podcast, but I highly recommend you to listen to this episode because it's a really, really good episode about business. So first we get into goal setting. We get into pushing yourself. We get into the biggest thing that Alex learned from one of his mentors, and it wasn't an easy lesson for him to take. We talk about setting up yourself for success. We talk about building that business, working with millennials. Alex has done extensive work, as I said, as a business coach with working with hundreds and thousands of small business owners across the U.S. And he basically shares his takeaways, the common things that small business owners like you bump into every single day, every single week, every single year while working in their businesses. So it's a fascinating interview. We get real personal, real deep. And we also share with Alex a little bit about farming too. So he's got a good grasp. We share a little bit more about how we work with farmers and some of the big issues that you all face as we work with you guys on a day-to-day basis. So again, I highly encourage you to listen to it. You know, it gets real deep. And I know you're going to have a lot of takeaways as you are building your farm business out there every single week of this year. Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Alex.
Well, hey, thanks so much, Michael. I'm excited to be here and grateful to you for having me on.
And Alex, you're a little different than most of our guests because we typically interview farmers. But one of the things that we like to keep bringing to our farmers' attention who we work with is that they are just running businesses. They're just in the farming aspect of running businesses. And so I thought bringing you on with your background of leadership, and you'll get to that in a minute, it would be really exciting for them to hear kind of someone who works with businesses on a daily basis. Do you want to give us a little bit more about your background and your work with businesses?
Yeah, so I work for an organization called Ramsey Solutions. Many people know it as the organization that was founded by Dave Ramsey. So Dave was someone that built a business, really started from being broke and built a business from a card table in his living room as one solopreneur to what is now an 850 person company. And I came here from a little bit of a background of I worked within a startup for a while in Austin, Texas. I held several leadership positions kind of growing up and things like that. Was always interested in the leadership side of business, the people side of business, and just leadership in general, and came here really as a product of the product. I had used everything that EntreLeadership and Ramsey Solutions was teaching. And this was, I made a list of the dream teams that I'd love to work for. And this was number one on that list. So I came here about 3 years ago. And the role that I sit in now is I get to coach business leaders, business owners around the country. And honestly, now it's around the world. The business principles that we have used to grow this business, that we continue to use to create the thriving culture that we have. What we do is we teach principles that transcend industries. So as you know, we teach industry or principles that apply to farmers. We teach principles that apply to manufacturing. We teach principles that apply to the tech sector because we believe that standard business principles are just what it means to work with people well. Business is easy until people get involved. And certainly the people side of business, the human side of business is actually what makes it so powerful. And so that's what we teach on and focus on. And that's what I get to do today.
Fun. So what originally attracted you into more of the leadership space and helping develop leaders?
That's a good question. I'm a firm believer in that idea that when a leader decides to get better, everybody wins.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that definition of leadership. I think it's John Maxwell that originally coined it. He says leadership is influence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I heard a Navy SEAL once talk about the idea that the way he looked at leadership and someone that is a leader is that if someone depends on you, you are a leader. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that way of looking at it, because that means that we all certainly have leadership potential, but more than that, we all have leadership responsibility. And I truly believe that when a person recognizes that responsibility, starts to own that responsibility, and starts to actively invest in growing themselves, then other people are going to benefit. And all ships rise on rising tides, right? So that's why I'm so passionate about this, is because I've seen when you can change the life of a leader, the ripple effect that has, where when I'm talking to someone like you, I know I'm not just talking to one person. I'm talking to one person that represents 5, 10, 50, sometimes 500, 5,000 people that they are influencing and leading and pouring into every single day.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so what you're saying is, as a business owner, you're a leader whether you like it or not. So it's in your best interest to be the best leader you can, because that influence goes not only to your team, but also to your customers, to your vendors, to the people you meet on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those ideas of people say, well, I'm not really a leader. False.
Yeah.
I mean, like we've kind of passed the age where you can decide I'm not going to be a leader, because like the world that we live in today demands that you work with people. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it's not really an option, right? You are leading people. Now, whether you're leading them up or leading them down is definitely your choice. But I think we are all leading people. It's the way we choose to do that makes a difference. And what we see so often is the difference between organizations that thrive, succeed, and flourish. The difference is not the economy. The difference is not the man or woman in the White House. The difference is not the industry. The difference is leadership. Mm-hmm. It goes back to that line. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And if the leader can get their act together and say that this thing is going to win because I make a decision that I'm going to move forward and grow every single day, man, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And the farmers we work with, those that embrace that and are actively leading their team, are the ones that we see winning on a daily basis and just exploding their businesses.
Yeah, I can imagine. Does someone stand out to you? I'm curious to know, and I know you were telling me a little bit about this before, but do you see ever examples whenever you're coaching farmers of where that, like just that idea, like thought I was in the farming business, and in reality, I'm in the people business? Do you have any stories or any examples of where that just clicked?
Well, it was my mentor, my original mentor, Paul Arnold, who runs a very successful farm in upstate New York. He first told me, he says, first you're in business, then you're in marketing, and then you're in farming. So that was kind of that whole shift up to the business side. And then I moved from that to starting to see those farmers that actually understood managing and leading people and just loving on their team. You can see that when you go to a farm, and just the whole energy when someone is doing that well and loving on their team. One of the guys that I just actually saw a post from him yesterday, they had 8,400 transplants to get out in 2 hours to beat the rain. And he posted a picture afterwards. He said, this job is easy when you have an amazing team like mine. What do you think that did for his team?
No kidding. Yeah. People thrive whenever you just show them a little bit of recognition. We always say the last time someone was actually specifically recognized for something that they did was their high school graduation. And then we wonder why 70% of the American workforce is disengaged, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. So what you said and what your mentor has talked about is, I think, so important. We got to sit down recently with Mark Miller. He's the guy that's in charge of people and leadership development at Chick-fil-A. Oh, wow. Right? Yeah. And I looked at an organization that's done this really well. I think they are probably one of the top 5 in the country today, and their results are starting to show it. I mean, they're in a whole nother echelon. There is no fast food chain in their league right now. Yeah. And I mean, the numbers are showing that. We probably talked for an hour, maybe 90 minutes, and he didn't talk about chicken once. He talked about people the entire time. the amount of money that organization and intentionality and energy and effort and focus, that is not a chicken company, right? That is a people company that just happens to sell a really freaking good chicken sandwich. But I think that parlays perfectly with what you were just saying of like, I'm in business first and then I'm in farming. I think that's so perfect, Michael.
Yeah. And, actually, so we were at the EntreLeadership Summit a month ago together. We're recording this in June. Actually, I think that was in early May, right?
Yeah. That was the first time I'd ever met you in person. All this time I see you digitally, and it was cool to meet you.
Yeah. So I actually sat down with one of the EntreLeadership store managers, and we had a fascinating conversation, and it all came back to the people. And he said, right now I'm in a little bit of a tough place.
I think you said EntreLeadership store managers. You mean Chick-fil-A store manager?
Yes. Sorry. The Chick-fil-A store manager. And he said, right now I'm in a little tough place because some of my best people have graduated and they have gone to other areas. And he said, right now that's where my thing is. I'm rebuilding my team, getting my people back to where it needs to go. And I think one of the things that we see with farmers that we work with, especially the ones that have teams, is most farmers run a seasonal business where let's say they hire their people in March, they lay them off in December, and sometimes they'll come back, sometimes they won't because of the seasons. And one of the ways we won as a company when we ran our farm for a decade was we had a year-round farm. We figured out how to have crops through those 3 winter months, the really lean months, and we kept our people with us long term. And so that meant that they stayed with us, they were trained, they loved the culture we had, and it just made that startup in that spring so much easier because we weren't bringing on new people all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes we forget that the greatest resource, regardless of industry, certainly for y'all's industry, and maybe even disproportionately so for y'all's industry, the greatest resource you have is the human resource. Mm-hmm. And if we just started to get our pocketbooks or our checkbooks or our balance sheets in line and our values in line with that recognition that the greatest resource that this team has, that this business has, is the human resource, and started to invest the intentionality necessary to maximize that resource, man, when that clicks for people, I have seen businesses shift over the course of 6 months. And like the number of success stories that I've seen just because the leader, just something clicks and they start changing the game with regard to how they value people, man, inevitably it shows up in the bottom line. But more than just showing up in the bottom line, I truly believe it's the right thing to do. Right? Mm-hmm. Like if we don't exist, if businesses don't exist to serve the people on our team and serve customers that we exist for, then what are we doing? Like, it's like, what's the point?
Yeah. To that, what you just said there, I'm on a lot of these Facebook groups that kind of talk about, the farming and stuff. And I saw someone comment once and says, yeah, I hired this person and, I know they weren't going to work out, because these workers, you can't get any good workers these days. And they said, this person didn't show up or they showed up late. And I was like, well, I think you're starting from the wrong premise. If you start with that they are going to be a drain on your business and that they are not going to work out, that's absolutely what's going to manifest itself. And that means you're not valuing people and you're not going to be able to support them to working their best for you.
Yeah. Ultimately, if there's a performance issue, it's one or two things. It's either a people problem or a leadership problem. Mm-hmm. And most often, people problems are actually leadership problems because who let that person in the door? Mm-hmm. Right? Like someone had to hire that person. They didn't just start showing up, right? And so you hired them. So like they are on your team. And the minute you decide to hire someone and the minute that they make it through your process, you better stop saying they and you better start saying we.
That's good.
We see so often that, and this can occur within organizations, but sadly some owners, and we wouldn't call them leaders, we would call them bosses, they can start talking about their team as they. And that is the wrong pronoun. We need to start saying like, we've got to figure this out because if we don't figure this out, we're not going to win. Right? When you start to perceive your team as we, they're going to start perceiving you as we. And it's like we're all in the same boat and this thing is going to sink or float based on our collective effort, not based on anyone's individual success or failure. Man, that changes the game. And that's not just a language shift. That's a mindset shift,
Absolutely. Okay. I'm going to zero in on something you said there. You said you just like the word boss. Tell us what are some common ways you can differentiate between someone acting like a boss and acting like a leader?
That's a good question. I was talking recently to our senior technology officer here. He is brilliant in the area of systems and processes. And one of the things that he mentioned was that a boss looks for compliance and a leader looks for cooperation and collaboration, right? We want people to be a coach, and a cop is that person that just looks around and they are looking for opportunities to catch people doing something wrong. And they are constantly stressing their brains out, trying to make the trains run on time, and they're pushing people to do something that those people have no desire to do because you haven't motivated them to actually do it. A leader is someone that casts a vision, rallies people around that vision, knows that we will go further together than we ever will go alone, and takes the time to get individual collective buy-in into that vision and says that the team is always going to be better than the individual. So we're going to do this as a team. And that's what leadership looks like. It's getting collective buy-in. Jim Collins has that great quote that says, leadership is 1% vision and 99% alignment. Leadership is the art of getting everyone on the same page. And if we can just cast a clear vision and then say, everyone, this is where we're going. I want you to go with me, but this is where we're going. Hey, I'm so excited about this is where we're going. You need to come with me. Hey, you got to be a part of this. This is going to be, hey, this is where this business is going. You need to be a part of this, right? That's so much better than you need to do this because it's your job, right? That sucks. Yeah. No one wants to work for that person. And if they do work for that person, they're not going to work there for very long. So when I think about a boss versus a leader, specifically in terms of vision, I think like a boss gives quotas, a leader sets goals, right? And a leader works with you to set goals that you deeply care about. Like, I don't know about you. I want to work for a leader and not a boss, but I also want to be a leader and not a boss.
Yeah, exactly. I remember one time I caught one of our team referring to me as the boss. And I was like, no. That's not how it works here. It's I'm leading this train or I'm leading this group of people. But yeah, that's not the way to look at that. I'm actually working right now. We do some coaching with some higher, larger enterprises. This person particularly has a 7-figure business. And, she has not motivated anyone to work on her team. They're all staring there with their eyes are frightened when you see them on the video feed, and they're stressed out. And it's that cop mentality, that going for that compliance, like, oh, you didn't do this by this time, which I told you to, instead of, hey, how can I support you through this challenge we're in right now? So I absolutely see what you're saying right there.
And what's crazy is it's kind of this paradigm shift. Like, we think we are operating as a quote unquote boss or as a quote unquote cop because that is a sign of strength. And in reality, there's probably no greater sign of insecurity than acting that way.
Oh, you're absolutely correct. Yes.
It's because people sometimes wave this banner of being a control freak around like it's something to be proud of. And in reality, that just means if you truly are a control freak that can't actually trust people, sometimes like being a little bit controlling, like that means you're doing the right thing. But if you truly can't trust people, sometimes that means you're just incredibly insecure, and that's okay. It just means we need to, we always say, clap, clap, change, right?
Yes.
We need to shift in a new direction. That's the beautiful part about humanity is we have the capacity and the ability, but I would also argue the responsibility to disrupt ourselves and change.
Yeah. And I think of one farm in particular where, one of the things they have is the entire farm has security cameras installed. And
oh my God.
Yeah.
And is it for their team?
It's so they can keep checking up on their team.
Yeah. That's like, it's funny. I had someone and she was trying to do the right thing, and she had joined our coaching program, and she was very, very new to all of this. And so she was investing in herself and she was trying to do the right thing. It was just all very new to her. She had never thought about leadership in this way. And so often the picture of leadership that we envision is a product of the way we've been led in the past.
Absolutely.
So sometimes it's all we know and it's not our fault. You just got to change. And she came to us, and it was around Thanksgiving time. And she said, I'm so excited about everything that I'm learning. And for the first time ever, I want to provide a Thanksgiving lunch for my team. And we were like, oh, good for you. Like, that's awesome. And then she said, I just have one question. Can I make them clock out and then clock back in so I don't have to pay them while we're at lunch? And it's like, oh, I'm like, we missed the point. We were so close.
Yes.
But yeah, like I have this incredible job because I get to see a lot of businesses from the outside looking in. When you're in the middle of it, I'm not gonna, like, I've done stupid over and over and over again. I mean, I have absolutely undeniably been a boss before in my life and over the course of my career. So I'm not gonna say that I've never done it. I'm just like so grateful for the position that I get to sit in now because I get to be on the outside looking in and I get to coach people and say like, hey, there's a better, more productive, more efficient. And ultimately, this is going to be more life-giving for the person, but it's also going to be more life-giving and sustainable for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's an incredibly unique position. I think that's what actually, makes my job really fun too, is I get to see on the outside of these farms. And you're absolutely right in saying that when you're outside of something, you miss all the weeds and you can see the 30,000 foot view. So you can really clearly delineate where those big roadblocks are in that team's way.
So I'm going to ask you, is there, and I know I'm probably not supposed to be the one asking the questions, but I'm just curious, is there a common denominator, like when you look at the farmers that you work with across the country, is there a common denominator in terms of like, man, this is the greatest challenge that they face, or you see some trend that it's like, this is the blocker that if people could just wrap their head around this thing, they would be 10% faster at what they're currently doing? Anything specific stand out?
Yeah. So actually it changes. And we teach like a 5-step process with what we call our farming success path. I'm not going to get into that because it's a little detailed and I've actually talked about in another episode, but what I'm saying is that roadblock changes. So the first roadblock is learning how to produce the product that they're trying to produce. The second roadblock is selling that. And then the third roadblock is teams and managing that team. So because the only way they can scale is when you add people. And most farms do need to have people on their farm in order to be profitable, we feel, because you can't be doing everything yourself. You're going to burn out. So you need to add that team component. But that's where they usually get in the trouble, is when they start adding people and business then starts to get messy.
Isn't that fascinating? Yep. That's that line we always use. Business is easy until people get involved.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a joke, but I mean, like, it's actually 100% true. Like, if the people problems like didn't exist, this would all be so much more clear cut.
Yes. And so that's where you look at our industry, which has gone to automation because of that problem. I mean, part of it is they just can't get the help because people don't want to do the work because farming's not easy. But the other aspect is you look at it removes that whole variable of people. So it's in one aspect.
That's a whole nother, and I know you didn't necessarily, I don't know if you wanted to go here or not, but if you read much of Seth Godin, one of the things he always talks about is like, you have to be such an artist or such a master at what you do, the way you do it. You have to bring so much of your humanity to a role that there's no way it could ever be automated or done by a machine, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that's his whole premise in the book, Linchpin.
Exactly.
Which is absolutely correct. And so let's say we go to these farmers markets where you have a dozen farmers vending. And the only way that they all stay in business is that each of them is bringing that humanity and doing everything a little bit differently. You've got people which say we want to be organic. You've got people that want to say we want to be conventional. You've got people that want to toe the line. You've got people that are doing red beets, yellow beets. But I think it all comes back to that aspect of who that person is and that sphere of influence that farmer is creating around them. And so one of the things we teach is you're not only a farmer, you're not only producing food, but you're a leader in whatever food culture movement you're talking about. We work specifically with the organic farmers. So we say, you're a leader in your region's buy local / regenerative movement. And that is going to be your key in growing your business.
That's so good. I love that. I haven't talked to you much about this, but I love that you focus on that. One of the things that we teach whenever we're talking to people about building a compelling mission statement or about crafting why their business exists is we say that rooted in the mission statement, there has to be something related to an aspiration or a dream that you have. And the question that I always ask people whenever they're identifying what that thing is I always ask them, what is the difference you want to make in the world, or what is the difference you want to make in your world? Right? Like, what is the value that you are adding, and what is the USP, the unique selling point that sets you apart? And then certainly that impacts your marketing, because so often people do have a unique selling point, but the only person that knows about it is them. It's like, we need to make sure the thing that sets us apart the way that we uniquely solve the problems or the stresses or the pain that people are facing, that needs to be front and center of every marketing piece that we have. In your stand at the farmer's market, on your website, on your business card, it needs to be everywhere, because again, that is going to be the part of your humanity, the part of what you can uniquely do that will draw people to you over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And for so many of these farmers, I like how you said it, what resonates with you and then what you're bringing to the world as well. And so many of these farmers, what they feel like is they want to feed their communities well. They want to, help save the earth on that one aspect. And the other aspect is a lot of them, were working the 9 to 5 and they hated that 9 to 5 and being away from their families. And so they wanted to basically be able to work on their farm with their families and enjoy that. And so that's why farming is so attractive to them, because that was where they put those two together.
I mean, most business owners are the same way, right? Is that they want to make a difference in the world, and paired with wanting to make a difference, or in their community, paired with wanting to make a difference, they also want the freedom that owning your own business can create. What we see, I heard recently, is that there's a big difference between running your business and owning your business, right?
Absolutely.
And do farmers often step out because they want freedom and then end up trapped by the thing that they created and realize that this is not, if anything, this is way less freedom than I had just working the 8 to 5 job? Is that a realization that people have sometimes?
I was actually just going to take the conversation there, because that is absolutely 100% something that it happens to these farmers. And I would say 99.9% of the time. So usually the farmer that comes to us is someone who started their farm and then they said, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? And so that is when we start saying, hey, here are the business principles that are going to get you back to owning your business instead of just running your business. Or as we like to say it, and E-Myth says, working on your business, not in your business. And so that's why, we teach the principles of the systems and the team and the marketing and such, because there's so much around that which gets you out of your business and building that business, which can operate with just, you having just basically doing the top level work.
Yeah. Isn't it so fascinating? It's the image I always get in my head. We see business owners do this all the time, and it sounds like you see farmers do this all the time. It's like we start out with our basic responsibilities. And I always think about the person in the airport that has some luggage. And we start with those basic responsibilities, and then the business starts to expand, starts to grow, and we've got aspirations. We're ambitious people, so we want to see it grow. So we start grabbing new responsibilities. We start chasing down new opportunities. And what that is that's that person that's at the airport. They start with their basic luggage, and then they just start grabbing more, like other people's bags, right? And they just start grabbing other things, and they walk into the mall and they grab some stuff there, and then they go to a restaurant and they grab some lunch. And after a while, after about an hour, you look at that person in the airport and suddenly they just are covered in baggage. And that's where we often intersect with business owners, is they're just covered in baggage. And what we know to be true in life physically, like if you're going to pick something up, you have to set something down. But for some reason in business, we haven't grasped that concept yet. And I am speaking as a practitioner, not as someone that has it figured out. I am a hoarder of responsibility. And in reality, you have to give up to go up, right? If you are actually going to grow your farm, if you are actually going to grow your business, you are going to have to give up things you used to do, maybe that you even used to love to do, because that is the price of growing something. That is the price of stepping out of your comfort zone. But so often we just think, oh, I'm going to add on 50% more, even though I was already at capacity, but I'm not going to let anything go. I'll just operate at 150%.
You nailed it. Yeah. And
it doesn't work that way.
It does not work. Yeah. And I think what you said, in order to pick something up, you have to set something down. That is so key right there. And that's something we see farmers do all the time.
They pick up too much.
Yeah. And one of the classic syndromes we see with farmers is they start, let's say they grow an acre of produce and it does relatively well for them. And so at the end of that year, they says, well, next year I'll do 2 acres, even though I was so stressed out and I just barely got by. If I do 2 acres, I'll probably make double the amount of money. So what we so often see is farmers think they can scale their business, go from 1 acre to 2 acres but they're still going to do everything. And what happens is they actually make less money because we all know when you try to juggle 12 balls, you're so much more likely to drop all of them.
Exactly. You cannot do it all well. It takes a tremendous amount of humility to recognize I can't do it all well. And if this thing is actually going to grow, I'm going to have to find some focus. It's incredibly difficult to do. I mean, talking to farmers, I don't even know that I'm qualified to use this metaphor or this analogy, but have you ever read Henry Cloud's book, Necessary Endings?
Oh, yeah. That's an awesome book.
Oh, I would recommend that. That's one of 5 books that I can say truly, and I'm not saying this just as an aphorism, it truly changed my life. My life actually changed because I read this book. But one of the things he talks about at the very beginning of the book is he talks about the practice that rose gardeners use of pruning, right? And that concept is so beautiful because it illustrates a principle that applies to all of us, that for something to achieve its full potential, you have to cut back things that will not contribute to that full potential. You have to cut back roses that will be good, but will never be best. And that's where we intersect with 95% of the business leaders that we work with, right? It's not between good and bad. It's not like someone's choosing between, am I going to grow this business or I'm going to go rob a Walmart, right? Like that's not happening. It's between what's good and what's best. And if we're not careful, we will starve ourselves of what's best because we are holding so tightly onto what's good.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things we teach farmers to that point is it first comes down to knowing your numbers. So we teach farmers all about the numbers. But then the second thing it comes down to is once you know those numbers, now you know the 80-20 rule, the 20% of your business that's giving you 80% of your results. And maybe you don't drop the other 80%, maybe you only drop the 40% of that 80%, but still you're going to move your farm in the exact right direction to have more profitability or being more streamlined.
Yep, that's exactly right. And it's just finding a sense of focus. That's all it is, right? It's not as complicated as we think it is. It's just we need to be focused on what we're doing and the direction we're taking things.
If you're looking to shave hours off your week and become a thriving farmer, you're going to want to head over to growingfarmers.com/free resources and download our free resource bundle. It contains ebooks on our profitable farm toolkit, increasing efficiency and safety in your washing shed, winter growing techniques, and our 30 farms to follow on Instagram. Now, if you haven't already followed us, we're Growing Farmers on Instagram. That's our handle. So head on over there and follow us. But you can also go to growingfarmers.com/free resources and download our free resource bundle today, and it will help you shave hours off your week and become more of a thriving farmer.
So we stand on the shoulders of giants, those who've gone before us. Tell us about one of the influential lessons you learned from one of your mentors and how it's helped you become the leader you are today.
It's a great question. There's a guy named Dan in Austin. He's one of my greatest mentors. I'm so grateful for that guy. He's an incredible friend too. I still have a once-a-month call with him to this, and I'll never forget. He was someone that I coincided with in college, kind of as a pastor person. That then he helped me get my job directly following college. I worked within a leadership development group that was associated with the church, and so he had got me that job. And I just started. I was fresh out of school, and we were probably about 60 days into that job. And man, I was just like, I thought things were going great. I had heard other people say things were going well, and I felt really good about things. And I was really excited because I was sitting down with him for our first cup of coffee since we had started. And I was really excited about that because, quite frankly, I thought it was going to be a good ego pad for me, probably. I was like, man, I'm about to hear that things are going really well. And so I sat down with him, and we had a little bit of small talk at the beginning, and he is just a massive man. So he is just like, towering over me at this coffee table. Yeah. And man, I will never forget this moment. He asked me how I felt like things are going. And I said, man, I think things are going good. Like, people have told me things are going good. I'm really excited and blah, 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 blah. Probably talk too much, like I have a tendency to do sometimes. And then I asked him the question that I wanted to know. I said, well, how do you think things are going?
Yeah.
I will never forget this moment. He sipped his coffee and he leaned back in his chair and he said, I think most people would say you're doing a really good. And I probably had a smug grin on my face at that point. And then he said, but I'll tell you, I'm not most people, and I didn't bring you here just to do a good job. Whew.
Yeah.
Have you ever been hit by a semi truck?
Yeah.
I haven't, but I'm pretty sure this is probably worse than that. And he said, like, because here's the deal, like, you may be doing a good job on other people's standard, but I don't think you're doing a good job to your standard. And I think you have so much more in you. You have a higher gear. And that's what I brought you here to see, is to see your higher gear. And I think if I'm truly going to be your mentor, I think I need to tell you to get up a notch. Gosh, probably one of the most transformational conversations I've ever had. And what I learned in that moment, I've thought a lot about that talk. And what I learned about that moment is that a good leader will hold people to the standard of others, right? And that means, like, that would have been Dan looking at me and saying, like, well, most people are saying you're doing a good job, so you're probably doing a good job. A good people will hold others to the standard of others. A great leader will hold people to the standard of their potential.
Yeah.
That recognition changed my life, because it was him looking at me and saying, I don't care what others' standards are for you. I care what your standards are for you. And I believe that you've got so much more in you. That was probably one of the greatest mentorship conversations I've ever had.
So to summarize, what he said there is, he says, I know you're a high achiever. There's a lot of potential there. And because you're such a high achiever, it's easy for you to do a good job. But I'm not asking you to do a good job. I'm asking you to take it to the next level and do a great job, because I know you have that potential, and I know that you have the ability to change the world, and I want to see that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's so much to be learned in the area of how do you set your standard, right? What do you allow to set your standard for you, right? If I'm just living my life to just be maybe just 10% ahead of average, what happens then if average sucks? Right? That I'm just 10% better than sucking. And since when was that my goal? Right. And so, like, he taught me, like, I need to have immovable standards that are not affected by culture for the areas that matter most. And the way I think about it is for faith, family, work, my physical life and my social life. I need to set the standards for those areas. I need to describe what winning looks like, because otherwise the world will try to tell me what winning looks like. And again, like, the world too often is the suck bar, right? I don't want that standard for my life. So I shouldn't be satisfied whenever I just hit that standard.
Absolutely. I like that quote too. The world is the suck bar. So do we want to be there?
Yeah, that came from a meeting around here, I think. And this is the story that I've heard is Dave, he's the CEO here. He got, I think, a little bit tired of people saying how we were doing in certain business units compared to the industry average. And
yes.
Like, since when is the thing that we measure ourselves on the industry average? Like, the industry sucks. Like, the industry is treating people badly. The industry is not responding to emails. The industry is not caring about your team. Why on earth would we compare ourselves to the industry? So that gained the name as the suck bar. Yeah. And we're striving to be way, way, way better than the suck bar.
Yeah. So what's it like working for Dave, who's, he's the third most listened to talk show host in the nation at this time. And I think he's just one of the best, radio show hosts out there. Just the way he connects with his audience, the way he loves on people, but really still gives that firm hand on how to handle their money.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I can say without a shadow of a doubt, he is the most remarkable leader I've ever worked for. Yeah, he's amazing. The guy is Superman. Because what's crazy is, yes, he is a radio show host, and 16 million people now listen to that radio show every single week. And what's awesome too is, like, it has such a powerful message. Like, it's the only radio show in the country with that size audience where life change is even a factor. I mean, if y'all listen to the Dave Ramsey show, you hear every single day people whose lives are being changed. And as a result of their lives being changed, their family tree is forever changed. That is, I mean, I get chills talking about it. But then beyond that, like, the guy does that for 3 hours every single day. He's on the radio. But then he is still very much the active CEO of this company. Like, in the marketing meetings, he is problem solving with his operations board. He leads our Monday morning staff meeting with all 850 people every single Monday. And then on top of that, he's a face for the organization as well. And so he's writing books, doing speaking events, kind of trying to promote our personalities right now. Like, he is just so dialed in. But what I love in the midst of all that is he will candidly tell you one-on-one or in front of millions, the reason why he's so successful in so many arenas is because he's standing on a pile of all his mistakes. Mm-hmm. And he's just survived long enough to tell the story. And that, I think, if I was to say from the outside looking in, one of the things that it truly makes Dave Ramsey the success that he is, I mean, he has bulldog level persistence. The guy just does not give up, and he believes so much in what we're doing. He refuses to pump the brakes. It's inspiring. I mean, it's the reason why I work here, right? Everything rises and falls on leadership, and I'm thankful I get to work for a pretty strong leader.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I remember starting listening to him when I was in my teens. The podcast, farming. You have a lot of hours on the tractor. And, he was one of those when I needed kind of like a kick in the pants, or I just needed something fun to listen to. He was the guy I always turned on. So, and then obviously we went through Financial Peace University when we got married, and we've always had, the financial principles that he teaches as the core of, how we run our life. And it's incredible because we have a very solid foundation because of that. And we look around at other people who are our same age, and you see how they struggle, and we don't have those issues. Yes, we have our issues, but we don't have those issues. We moved to another level, I guess.
Yeah. Whole new levels bring new devils, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Man, you're all in. I love that. And I love that you laid that foundation. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. In Romans 12, it says, "Do not be conformed to the ways of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." And it's like, if we just take the time to renew our mind and get our eyes set on what is truth and what do we truly want for the areas that matter most, for our faith, for our family, for our career and the people that we get to work with, for our friends and for our physical fitness. Like, what do we truly want for those areas?
Yeah.
And consistently and daily remind ourselves of what matters most. Man, it's just like that's operating on a whole nother level.
Yeah. So to that physical fitness aspect, you're a runner, you do triathlons. Where does that drive come from? Does it come back from those standards you have set for yourself?
I think that comes from a need to stay mentally sane more than anything. It's so funny. I grew up running just because it was, I guess, what you do. Like, my dad would go out running all the time, and I'd ride my bike with him. And then they started doing the John F. Ward Elementary Fun Run, and he'd help me train for that, and I'd get ready for that. And it's so funny. To this day, there was a kid in first grade. His name was Taylor.
Okay.
And I was incredibly competitive with Taylor. It was always me and Taylor in the fun run. The fact that I still remember this shows you how crazy I am. In first grade, Taylor won. No. In first grade, I won. And I was like, yes, I beat Taylor. In second grade, he won. In third grade, I won. In fourth grade, he won. And now it's like fifth grade. Like, this is the last fun run we're ever going to run. And this was like, all the chips are on the table. Here we go. And my dad helped me train for it, and I ran. So I guess I don't know why I tell you that. I hope Taylor's not listening to this, but I mean, like, I think I always had a little bit of a competitive bone in my body, and running is where that most naturally came out. And so then as I got older, I got into marathons. I've now ran, I think, 18 marathons. I've done two Ironmans now. And it really is like, my running time is a lot of time my prayer time. And it keeps me focused. It keeps me sane. But there are so many life and business and leadership and work metaphors associated with pushing yourself further than you ever thought you could go. It teaches you so many lessons that have nothing to do with running. Yeah, no, I agree with you. There absolutely is. Yeah. Are you a runner, Michael? No, I absolutely hate running. And so I look at people that do that. I think most people hate running. It's funny. I got to sit down recently, and one of the great joys of my career right now is that I get to sit down and interview remarkable people. And I got to sit down with Ryan Hall, who is the fastest marathon and half marathon runner in American history. Okay. And he told me, he said, "Alex, there's days I hate running." And I was like, oh my, like, Ryan, that's actually kind of good to hear. Like, I think that proves it that there are days when everyone hates running. I'm convinced.
All right. Well, I think it's every day for me, but let's move into goal setting, because that's something you teach at EntreLeadership. And, once that's something we do every month. I'm part of the All Access, which is EntreLeadership's coaching/membership program. So that's something you talk us through every single month. We set goals. Talk to us a little bit about why is that so important for people, and what can leaders get out of goal setting?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. What we see a lot of times, we have something here we call the momentum theorem. And I know you're familiar with this.
Yep.
It says that focused intensity over time multiplied by God equals unstoppable momentum. And what we see a lot of the time is when you're working with any highly driven individual or a growth-oriented person, certainly a business owner or business leader, like intensity is kind of the price of admission, right? Like I like if y'all are listening to this podcast, if you are still listening to this podcast just for fun, right, or to learn and grow, like I do not doubt your intensity, right? We're good there. What we see a lot of growth-oriented or leadership-minded people often lack is a sense of focus over an extended period of time. And that's what goals enable us to do, is they give us a sense of laser-like focus on the things that matter most. And so we use that SMART goal system where we say goals, and it's an acronym, SMART. Goals need to be specific. They need to be measurable. They need to be achievable. They need to be relevant. And they need time-based. And what we see is that if someone can just make those things happen and then write them down and tell somebody about them to hold them accountable to it, if you start sowing seeds every single day, you'll know better than most, you will eventually reap a harvest. We are all sowing seeds, but we shouldn't be surprised whenever we plant corn, we're going to get corn, right? I mean, the farmers out there know you never plant corn and say, oh my gosh, it's beans, right? It just doesn't happen. So if we sow wisdom, if we sow reading, if we sow diligence, if we sow consistency, if we sow valuing people, if we sow the things that we believe in, then eventually those are going to reap a harvest that we're going to be really, really happy with. But too often, like in my own life, I've sown stupidity, and I'm so surprised whenever I reap stupidity. It's like, dude, you shouldn't be too surprised. So that's what goal setting is. It's just sowing the right seeds and giving yourself a plan to make sure that you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it's steering your own ship instead of letting the sea just push you around.
Exactly. One of my great mentors here in the organization, his name is Daniel Tardy. I'll never forget the first week or two at the office. He sat me down. He said, Alex, for everything important, you need to make sure you have a plan. Because the great thing about a plan is that there will be days you don't feel like it. But the great thing about a plan is that your plan doesn't care about your emotions. It's like, yes, your plan doesn't care about your emotions. There will be days you don't feel like it, but your plan doesn't care what you feel. The plan is the plan, and you need to stick to it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things my mentor taught me too is like, Michael, you need to make sure you accomplish 100% of every single day. He says, if you only accomplish 75%, that means that you have 125% to do the next day. And so he says it's important even if you don't feel like it, to make sure that you finish out that day.
Yeah, that's so good. And so that probably involves you actually sitting down probably at the start of the day or maybe even the day before and defining what 100% actually is.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so what we teach farmers is obviously they need to have a weekly meeting with their team that kind of sets the kind of what the week's going to look like, get everyone on the same page, cast the vision. And then there also should be a 2x daily meeting, like a morning meeting to start the day and a evening meeting to kind of end the day. We rehearse the wins and basically also set themselves up for success the next day. Because if everyone is just out there doing stuff, you may think a lot's getting done, but it's probably all in the opposite direction of where it should be going.
Yep, absolutely. I love that you focus on that, and I love that you're teaching other people to do that. That's huge.
Let's talk a little. I know we mentioned employees and we talked about them in detail before. Let's hone in on something that's really starting to affect farmers and business owners right now, millennials. They're starting to take over the workplace. What are some tips that people can use to set themselves up for success working with millennials?
Yeah, I think I am uniquely qualified to speak on this topic because I am one. Michael, are you one as well? I'm trying to think.
I'm trying to remember is it 25 to 35?
It's something around that age. I don't know that anyone's ever defined what it is, but how old are you?
I'm 32. So yes, I would definitely be that millennial.
So you're in that range. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is going to be a shocker for some people. Millennials are people.
Yes.
Right. And so just like any generation, absolutely, like and I will be the first one to say, we have our quirks, right? And a lot of those quirks have been magnified and maybe more deeply exposed because of social media and because of the fact that we all have a supercomputer in our pocket now. Mm-hmm. Yes, you just take all those individual quirks and multiply them by a factor of 100 probably. This generation is not any more imperfect than the generation that preceded it. Mm-hmm. And it's also not any more perfect than the generation that's coming after it. We have our challenges that we're going to need to scale. And so what we know to be true is that the millennial generation is actually very entrepreneurial. I read a stat recently that said that more than any other time in recent history, millennials are fascinated and interested in the idea of running and owning and leading their own business. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
But here's what's crazy. More than any generation in recent history, millennials are less likely to actually step out and own, run, or lead their own business. So they are more interested in it than ever, but they are less likely to actually do it than ever before.
So they like that idea. They just don't actually like getting it done.
And I think, yes, this isn't in the data necessarily. My personal theory is because we are scared out of our minds, right? And because we've been raised in a culture that says step 1 is elementary school, step 2 is middle school, and you're going to have your parents looking over your grades, and you're going to have your teacher giving you the next steps to make sure you pass, and then you're going to have high school, and we're going to be even more involved in your life and telling you which AP courses and which AP tests you need to be taking, and then you're going to go into college, and college is way more structured now than it's ever been before, and you're going to have very little opportunity to make mistakes, and when you do make mistakes, there's always going to be people there to rescue you, but God forbid you make mistakes because that's going to hurt your GPA. So let's just not even make mistakes. Let's not even try. Let's just stay where it's safe, right? And so then we graduate college and then we go out into this thing called the real world. And suddenly there are opportunities to make mistakes. And there's areas where we're not going to be perfect. We're not going to get a 4.0. There's people that don't like us. There's people that we don't like. And I think that society is not structured, or the modern day school system is not structured in a way that necessarily prepares millennials for that type of work environment. Is that an excuse? Absolutely not. We have zero excuses, right? We're not a victim of this. This is just reality. And so we've got to buck up and own it. But here's what's really cool about that data that I shared is that millennials want ownership. They want to be deeply passionate about something. They want to be a part of something they deeply care about. They want to feel like they are driving something forward and contributing to a cause that they believe in. So often they care more about the cause than they care about compensation. It's crazy, right? And I say they, it's we, right? It's us.
Absolutely.
And so that gives any business owner or any farmer that is thinking remotely about the cause that they're serving, about the difference that they're making in the world, about the way they're treating their employees. If you are thinking about those things, you have an automatic competitive advantage in the marketplace today. Because the millennial workforce, which is now the largest percentage of the workforce, is going to flock to you. Because they don't want to be treated as a number. They want to be treated as a person that can make a unique difference. Now, does that mean they're going to be coddled? Absolutely not. And I would say if there's any millennial on this that wants to be coddled or that wants to just get opportunity because they think they deserve it, false. You have to earn opportunity. You have to earn trust. You have to earn responsibility. We do not get an excuse. We do not get a fast pass to gratification, fulfillment, or making a difference. But it does mean that we can make a remarkable difference in the workplace if we'll just stick with it. And employers have the opportunity to lead millennials in that direction.
And because as millennials, we usually are very tech savvy and we can be very driven, we can go there very fast if we put our minds to it. and can get outside of that scared, afraid to fail mentality.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's that example that I used earlier of my mentor. The reason why he was able to sit down with me across the coffee table and say, I'm severely unimpressed with you. You've got more in you. Is because what I didn't share in that story were the first two things he said. He said, Alex, I love you, care about you, and I'm severely unimpressed. Not I love you, I care about you, but I'm severely unimpressed. I love you, I care about you, and that's the key, right? It's like, because I care about you so much, because I believe in you so much, because I see a future for you that's so bright, I'm going to tell you, you've got so much more in you, dude. Like, man, if you can get to the level where you build a relationship that you have the ability to invest in a person that way, they will run to the ends of the earth for you. That's the kind of team members that we all need. That's what Dave has done so well here is we work really freaking hard. And the reason why we push so freaking hard is because we know from top to bottom, everyone deeply cares about the mission and we care about each other.
Yeah. And if you can wrap 850 people around a mission, you're going to make a huge change.
It's incredible. Yeah. Things are clicking here like I haven't seen them click in the 3 years that I've worked here. It's just things are popping in pretty remarkable ways.
Yeah. So to that point, one thing that Dave talks about and your team talks about are the KRAs. What is a KRA? I know a lot of people probably who haven't been familiar with Dave and the EntreLeadership. What does that mean and how does that work for teams?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I'm really glad you asked that because this is one of probably the most practical things I think a business owner can do to bring efficiency to their organization. So a KRA stands for a key results area. The only group that has more acronyms than we do is NASA. I'm amazed. So KRA is a key results area. And what that means is it's just a 3 to 5 bullet point list of what does winning look like in your role. So what are the top 3 to 5 areas that I need to be successful in order to be winning in my role? And here's what makes this different than a job description. Number one, it's a very concise list. This should be less than a page, 3 to 5 bullet points, crystal clear. But here's what's the secret sauce behind this. It needs to be outcome oriented. So we want to be focused on what is the outcome you are responsible for creating, not the task. So what does that look like? Well, pretend you've got a janitorial staff member. This is the simplest example I can give. You got a janitorial staff member. The difference between an outcome and a task is sweep the floors, right? And I'm literally telling you what to do and I'm telling you how to do it. Sweep the floors. The outcome is clean floors. And that sounds like a subtle difference, but it's really not. Because when we say clean floors, what are we doing? We are betting on that janitor's ability to problem solve. We're betting on that janitor's ability to get the job done. We're betting on their ingenuity. We're betting on their creativity. They may think of a way better way than sweeping the floors to get the floors clean. And ultimately, what the business owner should actually care about is the result, not the task. And so when we give people the result of a healthy and thriving office atmosphere or healthy and thriving reception area, a warm and hospitable front desk, right? Yeah. When we give them those outcomes, we are betting on their human creativity and ingenuity to get the job done in the way that they see fit. And I love this because this ties into basically everything we've talked about in our time together today. You want to talk about millennials that care about ownership and care about a cause, give them an outcome. Because an outcome is something that you can own. A task is not. A task is just, slave driving people. An outcome is something that I can own. And you're telling someone when you give them an outcome, you're telling them, I trust you. And that organizations move at the speed of trust.
Yes. And it comes all the way back to what we talked way earlier, which is the compliance versus collaborator. If you're all about compliance, it's that, you didn't sweep the floor, even though that floor is spotlessly clean. Collaborator says, oh my gosh, look at the amazing aspect of that clean floor. We're going to celebrate however you got that floor clean.
Yeah, exactly. And if you went and found a dust devil and picked that up and cleaned that floor, thank goodness you didn't sweep it. This is way better than sweeping the floor. Because what we're doing whenever we give people outcomes is we're betting, I bet there's a pretty good chance they could figure out a better way to do it than I could ever think of. Mm-hmm. Takes a lot of humility, takes a lot of bravery to do that, but man, that's leadership.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, let's start to wrap this up because I know we have been going for a bit. One question I have for you is, if there was a magic reset button as it relates to starting businesses and growing teams, what systems would you love to see business owners go back and put in place sooner than later?
Good question. I would say a mission statement and core values. And the reason why I say that is I heard a pastor once talk about these two kind of core items as what he called advanced decision. What that is it means that because I make this one decision today about why we exist being your mission, and what we stand for being your core values. Because I make this one decision today, it will make thousands of decisions for the future of my business, right? Mm-hmm. And it will tell me like core values is what we stand for. It's codifying and articulating and communicating, this is what we stand for. Well, once you identify those things, that's going to tell you who you should hire, who you should fire, what opportunities you should pursue, what baggage you need to lay down, what decisions you need to make when you need to make them, how you should treat people, how you should structure your compensation plans, right? It informs all that. And so to a degree, there are large percentages of those decisions that are already made because you did the hard work of identifying what you stand for. And by the way, that is scalable. I think the greatest contributing factor to people scaling a business well is establishing what they stand for and then teaching that to their team so that their team has the ownership and the ability to make decisions using that criteria. So that's what I say I wish people could start with more because that is a game.
Yeah. And I think to that point, there's so in business and when you're growing your business, scaling your business, there's something that was called decision fatigue. Is that you're making so many decisions all the time that eventually you get so tired, you have a hard time making decisions and you start making poor decisions. But as you just said, if you can go back and filter everything through that mission statement and those core values, that makes that decision making so much easier. And you can outsource it or let your team help you make those decisions because they have a filter.
That's so insightful. And that's what any great system or process does. We just believe in principle-based processes around here. Is a great system or process just makes things more efficient, right? That's all you're doing. And so what you said is perfect. Yeah, you're eliminating that decision fatigue because so many of those decisions are already made.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about the All Access. So this is a coaching program. I'm a part of it, been for about a year. It's more of involved. It's kind of, there's a lot going on there, but tell us a little bit about, how that works and your work with basically coaching entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's my day job. I don't get to do these podcasts all day. So that's what I do most of the time is we believe that true transformation in any area of your life, and certainly in a business, occurs when three things intersect: coaching, content, and community. And community is the big one, I think. So we want to make sure people have someone in their life that can be a guide, that can say, I've been there before, and I've coached thousands of people that have been in your position before, and we've helped them find the way. So coaching is really important, but also the coach is the person that will kick you in the tail, right? Yeah. If you need a kick in the tail and say like, hey, we need to get our act together. You didn't do this. And you said you were going to do this because a plan, again, doesn't care about your feelings. And then content. Our organization is a content-oriented organization, starting with the book EntreLeadership. And then we've got a master series event and just has all sorts of powerful we release new content weekly, entirely focused on business and leadership practices from the trenches. And then the final one is that community piece. And what we see, I read a quote recently. It's one of my favorite books I've ever read. It's a book called Leadership in Turbulent Times. And the book is talking about Abraham Lincoln whenever he was in the Oval and the Civil War had reached a new low. And the phrase in the book that I will never forget, it said, it was at this moment that he felt the isolation of ultimate responsibility. And I read that phrase and I was like, that's it. That's what business leaders face. That's what business owners face, because so often a business leader or a business owner is surrounded by people. They've got people all over them, right? They've got families. They've got, they've got team members that are constantly wanting their attention, their time. They've got colleagues. They're surrounded by people and they're incredibly lonely. And it's because no one else is sharing that ultimate responsibility of this thing rises or falls based on my decision. And so that's why that community piece is so powerful. We place someone in a mastermind group, and you're in one of the groups that I lead. You get to be part of one of the craziest and wildest groups that I lead.
Millennial based.
Yeah. As a result, it's one of my favorite groups that I get to lead. Y'all are such a blast. I never know what's coming next. And really the whole point of that group is that you are surrounded by other people that can empathize with your situation, that have potentially been where you are or are currently where you are, that can challenge you, that can support you, but they can also give you perspective and speak into the decisions that you are making today and moving forward to see your business where you ultimately want it to be. And so I get to play a little bit of role in the coaching side of things, the content side of things, and the community side of things. That's what we do for business leaders. And it's business leaders from solopreneurs all the way up to, we've got people that have 600, even to 1,000 team members.
So it's a great range, but they're all facing the same issues, just at a little different levels.
Yeah, exactly. And our goal is always, we want to pair you with business owners that are either at your stage or a little bit ahead of where you are, because we want you to have that board of advisors that can speak into where you are.
Absolutely. And Alex, where can people find more about you?
Yeah, well, they can find out about me on kind of the EntreLeadership content, on all that. I'm starting to do a little bit more interviews on our podcast, which is really exciting. So just released one this week, and we'll have more coming out. That's the EntreLeadership Podcast. That podcast is the reason why I work here. That's how I found out about this organization. So that's pretty cool, getting to step in and play that role of interviewer a little bit. And then obviously, if you have any questions about the coaching program or about anything else we've talked about today, my email address is alex.judd@daveramsey.com. And I'm sure you can put that in the show notes, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're on Instagram too. That's where I've been following you. Your running journeys.
Oh, yeah. If you want to see my face, it's at Judd on the Run. That handle kind of makes me seem like a convict, but at Judd on the Run is the Instagram handle and the Twitter handle as well.
Very cool. Well, Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. This always speaking with people that manage and help other businesses run always helps me grow and think differently about how we do what we do and how we help farmers. So I really appreciate you coming on, because it's just as much of a pleasure as just to listen to you talk about this, because I tend to take it back and work with leaders on farms every single day. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, Michael, I'm one of your biggest fans. And for the people that listen into this, the reason why I do what I get to do is because I believe small business is the backbone of the American economy. So I'm grateful for your time and grateful to anyone that's still listening to this. We really appreciate y'all, and we're rooting for you. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Alex.
So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that